Welcome. My name's Chris Davis. I'm a keto carnivore coach, and I am continuing my quest to find articles, evaluate them, and see if what they say is actually true. So I found this while I was looking for another topic, and on nutritionstudies.org, there's an article titled Carnivore Diet. What does the evidence say? So I thought, why not take a look? So they start off with the carnivore diet is among the latest and most extreme examples of the low carbohydrate fad. So first off, that's inflammatory to say it's an extreme example because people have been eating this way for estimated millions of years, whether it's animal-based or carnivore straight meat products itself. And it's not a fad, right? And we'll go over all this information. They also talk about how we, as carnivores, meat eaters, right, say that there's flaws in the, insistence that meat eating causes chronic disease. And it is extremely flawed, right? Every study I have found so far, and please, if you know of one that's contrary to what I'm about to say, send it to me. I would love to read it. But all the studies I found, they aren't looking at an animal-based diet. They're just not, right? They're comparing a standard American shit diet to something else, right? And so that standard American shit diet is going to look bad compared to whatever, right? Pick Mediterranean, paleo, vegetarian, vegan, pick one of the many different ones that are out there. They're not actually looking at animal-based, and they're definitely not looking at carnivore. So that was the first thing, right? So then they make quite a bold accusation, right? They talk about how the most books, the carnivore diets, right, they downplay or dismiss decades of observational studies. So first off, an observational study, they also call it an epidemiological study, right? Those are typically retrospective. So what they do is they send you a questionnaire once a year, once every 2 years. I saw one study that was once every 4 years, which, good grief, who the hell remembers what they ate 4 years ago? And so to me, there's not a whole lot of value in that, right? There might be some. You might be able to dig and find some. But unless you're scaling your food, right, literally weighing out your food, writing it down, keeping a daily log for a year, you would have no idea what you're eating because people typically underreport the shit food that they're eating and they overreport what they believe is the healthy food that we want to see them eating. So just because there's observational studies, it doesn't mean they're worth the paper that they're written on. That was the first one. And then they talked about how, a lot of these carnivore books selectively ignore intervention studies that don't suit the agenda, right? And substitute it for individual success stories. So what are interventional studies? So they're experimental studies where the researcher actually intercedes in a part of the study per design, right? So they meant to do it. Again, doesn't mean it's high quality, right? You have different confounders that you have to try to deal out, and honestly, you can't deal all of them out. So, and then the individual studies, I'm sorry, but when someone says that they had stage 4 cancer and they did a 21-day water fast followed by a carnivore style of eating, and 5 years later they're tumor-free, like there's something to that. And there's a lot of these. I've watched so many stories, amazing stories of people healing themselves from life-threatening illnesses. I mean, cancer, stage 4 cancer, seriously? And it's amazing. You can't discount these people. They have amazing stories, and there's more and more and more of them coming out. And so what we really need to do is we need a proper study that actually looks at not a standard American shit diet, but an actual animal-based or carnivore diet, right? Because, for example, Dr. Westman, he's been running a ketogenic clinic at a Duke University for over 25 years. But somehow he has no evidence that going ketogenic is helpful. Really? Take a look. So then they go on to talk about Paul Saladino, right? He wrote the Carnivore Code, and he talks about the anti-nutrients, right? Are plants really trying to kill us? And yeah, I mean, it's not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to plants. They're not all just great for you, right? And so it's not really proven either way because I've according to the quote, right, many of these plant products, which we think are anti-nutrients, well, they could have also good things in them. And so they say it's questionable, right, as to whether these compounds are potentially harmful as they might seem in isolation. So basically it's like, well, if we put it all together, if we look at the whole picture, maybe they're not as harmful for us. Okay, but there's harmful things in them. Again, not all sunshine and roses. They did say that more exploration and research are required to know for certain. Absolutely, right? Because not only are we dealing with anti-nutrients, which are nutrients that block the absorption of potential nutrients that are good for you, we also have oxalates that we have to worry about. So in 1948, there was a sorrel soup poisoning. It was a Polish individual. Sorrel soup, it's a veggie soup, right? He ate, my understanding is 3 bowls of this soup and died, right? Oxalate poisoning killed him. So the notion that because you're eating plant products, everything's great, hunky-dory, and dandy is not true, right? They are harmful to you. The dose is the poison, as they say. And how much poison it takes? For him, it was 3 bowls of sorrel soup to kill him. Right? Someone else might have 3 bowls and it may not faze them, or may not seem to faze them, right? So anti-nutrients, they are compounds found in plant foods, right, that interfere with the body's ability to absorb some essential nutrients, right? So one study I saw said that, for example, spinach, right? Popeye, eat your spinach. 2 to 10% of the nutrients in spinach is actually bioavailable to humans, right? So the iron, right? That's what they always push is the iron that's in spinach. 2 to 10% is actual bioavailable to us. So why not just eat a 4-ounce piece of steak? Then you get all that heme iron. It's way better for you than eating, 7 cups of spinach. So then they make a claim in this article that the supporting evidence does not exist, right? That's a bold claim, because obviously they didn't look too far, because I just researched origins of the carnivore diet. And so what it came up with, granted, right, in 2020, I believe, is when someone coined carnivore diet. Right before that, it was animal-based. It was low-carb, high-fat, Atkins, right? So it came by different terms. So yeah, if you just flat out research carnivore diet, oh, look, nothing before 2020, it's a fad diet, then yeah, you might believe that. But if you actually use your coconut a little bit and dig, right? So I found this where in 1797, Scottish surgeon John Rollo, found animal-based diet that this guy healed his partner or his buddy of diabetes. And so for 225-ish years ago, there was evidence. And so you've just got to find it. You've got to look for the evidence, and you've got to look beyond the scope of just calling it carnivore, because it has been, like everything else, called many things, right? Plant-based used to be vegan, vegetarian, but they rebranded and they became plant-based. So it happens. Everybody, most people, I don't know, maybe young folks nowadays don't know who Dr. Atkins is, right? But he had the low carb diet, right? And there was people trying to say he died from his diet, and he didn't. He slipped and banged his head, and the heart issue he had, his physician said, had nothing to do with his nutrition. So get off that rodeo. So then they make a false claim, right? They say beyond a century-old case study of 2 Arctic explorers and speculation about the diet of Inuit or Mongolian nomads, the only evidence is anecdotal. Incorrect. It is more than anecdotal. So there was 2 explorers, and I'm not going to chop and butcher his first name, but Stephenson and Karsten Andersen, right? They shipwrecked. They lost all their supplies. Stephenson was a self-proclaimed vegetarian, right? Self-proclaimed. I couldn't find anything on Andersen of whether he claimed to be whatever. They lost all their supplies. So they lived with the Inuit tribes, who are animal product eaters, right? They're meat eaters, they're carnivores. They lived with them 6 months till they could get rescued. And then because he felt so good, right? Stephenson felt so good that they allowed themselves to be part of a case study, literally locked up in a hospital. And that way they can make sure that they only ate animal products, right? Stephenson was locked up for 2 months. Anderson allowed himself to be locked up for 4 months, and then they ate carnivore for a year. And so Stephenson went from vegetarian to carnivore, said he never felt better, and his gingivitis healed up. So it's not just anecdotal, right? They allowed themselves to be experimented on, right? That is like one of the best randomized controlled trials, right? It's a controlled trial. But they frown on that now, right? You can't just lock people up. This was 1927, 28 that they allowed them to do this, right? Almost 100 years ago, they allowed themselves to be locked up. Like, no, dude, try it. It works. And they allowed them to experiment on them. And not only do they feel better, and there's video of Stephenson saying that he never felt better in his life, they didn't get scurvy, right? They're like, oh, you're not going to get enough vitamin C, and you're going to get scurvy. Well, when you're not a carb burner, you don't need as much vitamin C, and there is vitamin C in cow. So, and then they make an inflammatory statement in the article where they say if someone decides to make potentially life or death decisions based on such thin body of evidence, that's their prerogative. Again, one, it's not a thin body of evidence. There's actually a lot of research out there. One, to debunk the plant-based argument, and two, to show that we are designed to be meat eaters. So for me, to be vegan is a life or death decision because we are not designed to be vegan. If you only eat vegan and you don't supplement and you don't buy the lab grown crap, you are going to be nutrient deficient. So to me, that's a life or death decision that people will make. And then they go on. They talk about the survey data that was published in 2021, that the diet was well tolerated and that the dieters experienced few adverse effects, right? And then they talk about that there's several obvious issues. So then they go and they try to discredit the method that they used, right? So they did use people that frequent carnivore websites, the carnivore social media community. They talk about it being an email survey without vigorous verification. They talk about there was no pre-food intake. Okay, observational study isn't any better. Again, they send you a survey, what'd you eat in the last year? Okay, so don't just discredit it because you didn't like how it was done. What was the problem with how it was done? There's nothing wrong with asking people that have been carnivore for 8 years to line out how they're doing, right? It's not a problem to email. I mean, welcome to the century that we're in, right? It's not the rotary phone and the MS-DOS computers that I brought up with no mouse, right? We're in the age of technology. So sending out an email survey, I get bullshit ones all the time. Well, you fill this survey out. So to discredit the method because you don't like it, it doesn't mean it's an issue. So just take that for what it's worth. They also said that, meanwhile, there is a mountain of evidence suggesting the carnivore diet is likely unhealthy, right? Well, again, this goes back to the experts say. Who are the experts? Because I can tell you when a vegetarian CEO sponsors a study, it's no wonder that it comes out and says that carnivore is bad for you. Or even when they are the researcher themselves a vegetarian or vegan, right? They've already made it up in their mind regardless of any information they come across. And so they talk about, countless large-scale observational studies consistently show that plant-predominant diets are associated with lower incidence or mortality of numerous chronic diseases. That's because it was compared to a shit diet, right? If you're eating Twinkies and Twix and cookies, cakes, and donuts, drinking soda, being on the couch playing video games for 18 hours a day, and then you go and you drop the shit food and go to anything really, you're going to do better. Let's face it. So then there are several interventional studies, right, that have shown that taking animal products, turning over to whole food, plant-based, can improve health outcomes. Again, this has not been proven. They haven't done a true carnivore diet. It is a shit diet to a vegetarian diet, a shit diet to a vegan diet. We need a true, like I've seen how many testimonials on YouTube, you see vegan to carnivore, and they talk about all their health issues that were corrected by going vegan to carnivore. Well, show me the video that shows carnivore to vegan and someone just killing it. Okay. Then they go on to say, with the evidence of suggesting that it's unhealthy, right? They talk about laboratory experiments to help to explain the association between animal protein and disease progression, right? And then, of course, they say numerous additional studies highlight the potential benefit to shift away from animal products. Okay, potential benefit. Again, not comparing a carnivore diet to plant-based, to vegan, to vegetarian, right? They're not doing an accurate across measurement. And then, of course, they all talk about the lower impact of the environment, which is a complete load of horseshit. So for that, I would recommend the Great Plant-Based Con, or Toxic Superfoods. The Great Plant-Based Con, she explains it very well, right? They're actually talking about how they skew the narrative and they talk about feedlots, right? Oh, these feedlots where the animals are just tortured and, oh, they're killed, and not where I live. Okay, I live in Idaho. I live at 6,000 feet, and the cattle are just roaming around. They're roaming around, they're eating the grass, they're getting in my driveway and shitting on my driveway because I don't have a fence yet. And so they steer away from that, right? They don't tell you about the animals that are treated very well. They just try to focus in on maybe the one or two areas where the people aren't so nice. Again, that doesn't represent the whole population because you got a couple assholes, right? If you line everybody up by shoe size and pick the size 7s, you're going to find some assholes in there. But that's another thing they try to run on is the environmental impact. So another grand assumption that they make, long-term research on the carnivore diet, as I've already written, completely absent. Again, I debunk that. It isn't absent. You just got to do better research. In light of the research supporting plant-based diets, much less a plant-inclusive diet, the problem that carnivore dieters face now is that even short-term research is difficult to justify funding. Why? Well, they relate it to the flat earth theory, right? That it falls flat on its face because it goes against the established research. Well, no shit. No shit. Because do you think that Kellogg and Post want you to stop eating cereal? Do you think that Quaker wants you to stop eating oatmeal? Like, seriously, they would lose their asses if you stopped eating their plant-based crap. They would fall on their face, the big pharma, if everybody went and started eating steak and eggs or bacon and eggs for breakfast. They would lose money. So they fund the research. Okay, what I saw was 43% of research is funded by big food. Do you think that the other 67% is not somehow funded by big pharma? Like, this is a moneymaker for them. So that's why you have a hard time getting funding, because they can't have something funded that shows that you can just eat animal products and be entirely healthy. They can't afford that. They want to have their condos and their yachts and their house on the Riviera. So I digress. Moving on, right? Experts say, what? So the editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Cardiology, right, put in 1990, he's quoted as saying that essentially we are herbivores. By nature, we are herbivores. What? What? Say what? We are not. Okay, we do not have the horse teeth, right? We have canines. We do not have cow's teeth. Right? Our stomach acid level is 1.5. A carnivore's is 2. So we're actually on the line of scavengers as far as our acidity of our stomach, right? We're not ruminant animals. We don't have one stomach and 3 chambers for regurgitating and processing food, right? We don't have a huge cecum for starting that breakdown and digestion of vegetables, right? Herbivores don't have a liver, pancreas, and spleen and other things that we have, right? So that's just not correct. I don't know how this guy got to that damn conclusion that we're naturally herbivores. Nothing in our digestive system from mouth to a-hole says that we're herbivore. Nothing. Okay, just look, pick a different picture. Do your research, do your homework, look up different herbivores and see if we have the same intestinal system, because we do not. So this is like, what a load of So they're quoted as saying, whereas carnivores do not develop atherosclerosis from consuming meat, herbivores do. Humans respond to animal foods more similarly to rabbits than they do dogs or cats. So the experiment, I believe it was 1905 or 6, they gave rabbits cholesterol. And the rabbits, hey, they got heart disease. And they said, see, cholesterol causes heart disease. We're not herbivores. And in 1958, the Framingham Heart Study was coming out saying that it was not cholesterol and saturated fat that caused heart disease. And he postulated it was sugar. And so, like any good company, the sugar company paid 3 Harvard researchers to say that it was fat and not sugar that caused heart disease. So, no, we're not getting atherosclerosis because we eat meat. We're getting it because we overconsume sugar. That's the real problem. So what does this all mean? Well, my conclusion, based on what I read and debunking the things that are just not true, by design, we are animal-based eaters. Now, I'm not of the school that means that we are animal products and nothing else. I think many people will thrive being full, actually Lion's diet, right? Salted beef and nothing else. I believe there is a population of people that will just make them unstoppable, right? However, I do believe that people are and need to be 80% animal products. And then the 20% of whatever you can eat that doesn't cause you ill effect, right? Whether it be sourdough bread, whether it be some veggies, some fruit, right? Whatever it might be. So the big thing is finding what your animal-based eating is. The only macronutrients necessary for life are fats and proteins, right? Your body uses gluconeogenesis to create the glucose that you need for activity. And so you don't have to ingest carbohydrates for energy. Our digestive system is carnivore. It is not herbivore, not even remotely. And personally, I'm not a doctor. I don't have MD after my name. I believe that's where cancer is coming from. I believe cancer is coming from us eating too many carbohydrates, because whether it starts out as sugar or starch, it converts to sugar in the body. And we've known for over 100 years that sugar feeds cancer. We've known that. So we are not designed to be herbivore. We are designed to be carnivore. And then the impact to the carnivores less. I talked about the great plant-based con book. I highly recommend it. It's a really good book. I had it on Audible and read it back and forth on my drive to work. But one of the things I've noticed is that vegans constantly seem to discount the millions of little critters that die in the production of their food because they don't eat it. Well, actually, they probably eat some of it, because I heard that fish meal is used for fertilizer for a lot of crops. So if that is the case, then yeah, you're using animal products to grow your food. So again, how is that good for the planet, the environment, and the animals? So in conclusion, I can't believe that this individual wrote this thinking that it was factual. I mean, it took me, I don't know, a couple hours to do the research and look at the information and debunk it, right? Again, I don't believe everybody needs to be 100% animal product, but we sure as hell weren't designed to be vegetarian or vegan. So with that, I hope you learned something. I have been enjoying getting into the weeds of the research on this and seeing whether I'm right or not. And if you have another article that you come across that you think I should take a look at, please let me know in the comments. With that, I wish you a blessed day.